Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk at Black Hat USA. Terry Sweeney here, contributing editor with Dark Reading, and I'm joined now by Nicko van Someren, CTO of Absolute Security. Nicko, thanks so much for dropping by the news desk.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We are talking cyber resilience. Let's just start with some definitions. How would you define cyber resilience?
So, cyber resilience is really all about our ability to bounce back from attack and bounce back from anything that might compromise our systems. In the course of our business, we collect a lot of telemetry from millions of devices out there, and we see that people are constantly deploying new security controls. Most organizations are putting 10 or a dozen different security controls on devices, and they go out of compliance. And they go out of compliance for all sorts of reasons. It's not always attack, though that's one of them. Sometimes end users take out files.
Sure.
They think that the reason their machine is running slow is that some tool that you've installed, and so they uninstall it. Maintaining the consistency of those controls is critical, and bouncing back after a real attack is critical to maintaining that good security posture. So cyber resilience is really all about the ability to bounce back and bounce back as strong, if not stronger.
The term cyber resilience is very much in the ether. CISA and other government agencies have an obvious interest in this, especially where critical infrastructure is concerned. Talk about some of the key capabilities that are needed to achieve increased cyber resilience.
So, whenever we put humans in a decision-making cycle about how do we action some stimulus, we've got a delay. If we use tooling for maintaining our security posture, for monitoring it, and also for repairing it when it goes out of compliance, we can often respond much more quickly. We don't want to be hair-triggered on this, especially if the action that we'll take to try and restore something is a little disruptive. But we do want to make sure that we have tooling for doing this. And critically, we need to make sure that we deploy this tooling before it's too late. If your machine's already been compromised, then you can't easily go and deploy tooling to fix that compromise. So we've got to make sure that whatever tooling we have to deliver cyber resilience is something that's sitting there already,
right,
ideally fairly deep in the system, so that it can respond to anything that happens at a higher level.
Talk a bit more about the tooling itself. Is this having a super robust backup and storage facilities? Something else?
So there are many different dimensions to resilience. Clearly, having a robust backup of your data is important. Having a robust backup that is versioned so that you can go back to a known good state. Because if your speaker a couple of slots ago was telling us that there's a now 12-day mean time to detection, which means that we do have to roll back our backups a little way before we can restore to a known good state. There's also tooling which can repair security controls. BitLocker is supposed to be on most of our devices, but every second Tuesday of the month, Microsoft switch it off so that they can install patches, and sometimes they forget to switch it back on again.
Sure.
So there's many different dimensions to the controls that we need to restore.
That being said, a 12-day restoration window is intolerable in real cyber resilience, correct?
Yeah, I think that I don't want to name names or point fingers by any means, but there was a notable incident that took a lot of people's systems down for, in some cases hours, in some cases days, just a couple of weeks ago, and I don't think that it's appropriate to sort of dig into that, because I think it's already been dug over a lot. But what it raised was the importance of how do we get ourselves back to a good state. In that case, it wasn't an attack, it was just a corrupt file. But getting you back to the right state, how do you do that quickly, and how do you do that even when the nature of the failure is taking down so much of the system?
Is this the firmware issue that we hear about with regard to some of this resilience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if your operating system is compromised, then having some mechanism to boot into another operating system. So, whether that's booting into a recovery mode for the existing operating system, whether it's booting into a separate operating system that's sitting in a spare partition, or whether it's actually happening down below at the UFI layer where you have the opportunity to do repairs to everything that sits above that.
So does cyber resilience then require large organizations in particular, super reliant on their IT infrastructure, to have practically a mirror image of all the critical files that they need, the apps, the servers, the pieces of cloud? It feels like this is what we're tiptoeing up to.
Having good backups of everything is critical, these days we mostly store a lot of our documents in cloud repositories, so there is a certain natural backing up in that process. But it's really, whether you have physical copies, whether you have replacement hardware, I think it's more about having a plan in place in advance that tells you how you're going to get back to that good state, and having the tools in place to allow you to do that rapidly, and particularly do that rapidly when we're in an increasingly hybrid work environment. And so how do you remotely reinstall an operating system for somebody? In the face of many systemic malware attacks, the right thing to do for most organizations is going to be to burn the machine to the ground and re-image.
Okay.
And so you've got to have some mechanism that's going to allow you to do that in the field.
What advice would you have then with the firmware issue for customers? These are, admittedly, these are rare instances, but stuff happens, as they euphemistically say. What advice would you have for customers in that instance?
I think that, thankfully, firmware-based malware is still relatively rare. I think that the opportunity, though, is firmware-based restoration tools and building solutions that operate pre-boot of the rich OS to say, can I have a minimal stub that will allow me to do that recovery process in real time, remotely, and use these days most vendors are starting to add firmware level networking functionality, and we can build on that to deliver firmware-based resilience solutions that are going to allow us to do that recovery more or less from bare metal.
Right. It seems as if cyber resilience has also become a board level issue. Is that an accurate assumption?
I think so, and I think that's the reason I believe that it's become a board level issue is that when we look about risk systemically in an organization, there is what is the probability of an attack being carried out, and what is the impact of that attack? And there's many aspects to the impact, but duration and recovery time is clearly a very large part of that, especially when that represents downtime for your business. We've seen for decades people spending more and more and more on trying to squeeze that probability, but we're getting diminishing returns. It's like buying a fancier hi-fi. You spend twice as much, you don't get twice as good sound quality. We've reached it's no longer very squishy in the probability dimension. So if we can reduce the impact of an attack by reducing the time it takes to recover, then that's the other dimension. It's a much squishier dimension at the moment. So there's a lot more opportunity to reduce systemic risk by having more resilience and having quicker time to respond.
Nicko, real briefly, tell us a bit about what boards need to know about cyber resilience. Technology has not typically been their strong suit, though they've gotten a lot smarter about it. I think we can agree. If we take a deeper cut at that, what do they need to know about cyber resilience?
So boards' positions are generally considered to be, about oversight rather than management, and so they need to talk to their management team about how do you approach cyber resilience? What are you planning? Have you checked those plans? And what tools do you have in place in the face of these adverse circumstances that you can bring to action at a moment's notice?
Nicko van Someren of Absolute Security. Thank you so much for joining us on the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for helping us think differently about cyber resilience.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.